Everybody, welcome back to the Cow's channel, The Cow's Opinion, where I give you the latest and greatest opinion on the best and worst news coming out. And you don't need to get mad, you just need to comment below because it is a Cow's Opinion. It's a moot point, doesn't matter, so don't get upset about it. And today, the big story coming out is that the FTC has decided, as of Thursday, to officially sue to try to block Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Their commission voted 3-1 in favor against the planned $68.7 billion deal. And like everybody else on the internet, I'm wondering why they just couldn't go to 69 for the memes. However, Microsoft believed in giving peace a chance and offered concessions to the U.S. agency, but now it's not backing down. They want to go to court. Guys, this is pretty freaking huge. So basically, the Federal Trade Commission, which is the group in the United States of the government that makes sure that competition is fair and that everyone plays by the rules, is challenging Microsoft's attempt to buy one of the biggest video game publishers in the world, Activision Blizzard, saying it violates U.S. law by unfairly suppressing competition. Now, this article on CNBC goes on to let us know that in 1998, the Justice Department filed a similar broad antitrust case, but that didn't have to go to court because Microsoft was willing to change practices related to their Windows operating system. Microsoft has been trying to close this deal with the intent of it going through by June of 2023. That's probably, if you're not aware, companies are kind of weird. Whereas we consider the end of the year the end of December, the beginning of the year the beginning of January. Some companies have their fiscal years end in the fall or summer. There's not really any major rhyme or reason that it happens. Sometimes it's just helpful to their analytics and reporting structure, and sometimes it's just the way that they do it. Sony has been trying super hard to get anybody who will listen to just stop this because they're saying that it's unfair and that will allow Microsoft to do terrible things like exclude customers and raise prices. Sony then decided to be the first major company to increase prices on their games to $70. Screw you, Sony. Now, Microsoft, for its point, is saying it doesn't make sense because Call of Duty, which is the main thing that Sony is arguing about, needs to be on as many platforms as possible so they can sell it to as many people as possible. The thing makes almost $1 billion or more on its release weekend every year. Why would you limit that? Now, I don't know whether Microsoft is or is not going to make it exclusive, although they did recently say they're committing to a 10-year plan to bring it to Nintendo as well. Now, Microsoft's Vice President Brad Smith has said, "We continue to believe this deal will expand competition and create more opportunities for games and game developers. We've been committed since day one to addressing competitive concerns, including by offering..." What the hell is this getting in my way for? Earlier this week, proposed concessions to the FTC. While we believed in giving peace a chance, we have complete confidence in our case and welcome the opportunity to present our case in court. Now again, they voted 3-1 at the FTC to move it forward to the FTC's internal administrative law judge who makes an initial decision after a trial-like proceeding. That's how it works. I had to learn this too. And then the respondent or FTC staff as compliant counsel can choose to either appeal to the full commission for a vote, and after that, they could still ask a federal appeals court to review the order. So, this could go on for a while, depending on how it goes. Now, if the ALJ makes an initial decision that one side really likes and the other doesn't, but they realize that they don't really have much of a leg to stand on, they might not be willing to push further. Now, the FTC's complaint states the following. With control of Activision's content, Microsoft would have the ability and increased incentive to withhold or degrade Activision's content in ways that substantially lessen competition, including competition on product quality, price, and innovation. This loss of competition would likely result in significant harm to consumers in multiple markets at a pivotal time for the industry. Now, we'll get to this part in a second because the FTC says Microsoft has a record, including the ZeniMax deal, of buying games and using the moves to suppress competition, and they promised the EU Commission Antitrust, which is the European body that's equivalent to the FTC, that they would not make the games exclusive, and then certain things like Elder Scrolls, Redfall, and Starfield are being into exclusives. but I've got something to talk about on that too. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So, basically, Activision Blizzard, as you know, brings their stuff to a variety of devices, and the FTC is worried that will only come out on Microsoft afterwards. They could also say they can adjust prices or worsen the experience on competing hardware, or keep Activision Blizzard consoles from reaching other consoles? Yeah, that makes no sense. The agency, I don't think these guys know video games because Activision Blizzard doesn't make a console. You can tell that this is kind of odd. So Microsoft, for its part, while it does have some exclusive titles, they also pointed out that, hey, we put Minecraft on everything. And Sony has its own set of exclusive franchises. And we've bought stuff to other stuff that they have not. It's important for more people, not less, to play games. Now, Microsoft also wants to increase its Game Pass. It's already the top tier subscription gaming service you can have. But of course, if Call of Duty comes to Game Pass, that's a pretty big deal. We want Call of Duty to be enjoyed by more players around the world. That requires Call of Duty to being on diverse platforms after the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, said Activision's executive VP for corporate affairs. Now, this lawsuit is important for current FTC chair Lina Khan, because she has long signaled that she wants to be a lot more aggressive on tech. This is probably the biggest thing that she's doing since she took office. And it is very important for her. They want agencies to become more comfortable with taking big swings. Because if they win, that means that they're not challenging enough. But federal enforcers have seen a string of losses in recent months, with the exception of the Penguin Random House deal to acquire Simon & Schuster. So the FTC is kind of spotting right now. They don't have a good record in the recent list of things. They've been losing a ton. It's been tough because they're losing a ton. Tongue-tied. The FTC has recently rejected their challenge of Illumina's proposed acquisition of Grail and Biotech, but the FTC is planning to appeal. And it's also considering appealing on healthcare with Microsoft, sugar with U.S. Imperial Sugar and U.S. Sugar, and Booz Allen Hamilton and Everwatch. I don't even know what that is. But I do know that those are massive companies. United Healthcare, the sugar industry is pretty concerned, and biotech is also pretty concentrated. So the fact that the FTC is losing so many cases means they really want a big win. The goal of the FTC is not to prevent mergers. The goal is for the FTC to look strong enough to where mergers that they don't want to happen never get proposed. They don't want to take the time and money to do this. Now it goes on to talk about a little more history of Microsoft, and that Microsoft's purchase of Activision will let it compete effectively in the gaming industry, spurring innovation and helping customers. He downplayed concerns by competitors such as Sony, saying the company is excited about this deal as Blockbuster was for the rise of Netflix. Now, Microsoft is trying to buy Activision Blizzard shares, which means that they're going to pay for everybody who has shares. They've agreed to pay $95 a share. After the FTC announced their case, they've gone down to $73, which is not... They were in about the mid-70s, I think, at the time, so it's not a massive drop. Bobby Kotick, scumbag and current CEO of Activision Blizzard, told employees in the following memo, simply put, a combined Microsoft ABK will be good for players, good for employees, good for competition, and good for the industry. All players want choice, and this gives them exactly that. We also reported on an earlier episode of Cow's Opinion that the FTC was looking into whether they blocked the deal. I don't know if this is the kind of big swing. I know they want to get more comfortable taking big swings, but let's look at one of the major concerns, because coming from here, PureBox, the European Commission came to the aid of Microsoft and cleared up some facts that the FTC appears to have misunderstanding. The EU has recently said that Microsoft never made any promises to not take some of ZeniMax's franchises and make them exclusives. They're saying, we never made that choice. Microsoft didn't make any commitments to EU regulators not to release Xbox exclusive content following its takeover of ZeniMax Media as per the European Commission. Now, As pointed out, they only promised that they will honor the obligations to make current games available on other hardware, including 2 timed exclusives for Sony, Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. Both really good games, by the way. And at the time, they said they wouldn't make any existing games, but they didn't say that things like Starfield or Redfall coming out in the future would not be exclusive, and that they would be decided on a case-by-case basis. Now, the response today explained that the ZeniMax deal was permitted as it would not raise competition concerns. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the EC doesn't have Activision Blizzard concerns. It just means that they didn't have any with the ZeniMax deal. We're going to go up a little higher into this story now because there's been an update from Mr. Fraser Gilbert about Stephen Toledo of Axios, got in touch with the commission to get even more light, because this is a big deal. The FTC's biggest bullet in their gun, not their only bullet, but their biggest bullet in their gun right now, is that Microsoft broke faith on video games once before, recently, and they're going to do it again. But the EU is saying, no, they didn't. They never made that promise. So lots of excitement today about whether the EU is saying the FTC was wrong to partially justify, only partially, they still have a case, it's just a lot weaker, to its suit to block Microsoft's Activision bid due to Microsoft's promise to the EU about Bethesda and ZeniMax. Now, this is really in the weeds, but we're going to try to get through it. First, the European Competition Commission says it has no comment on whether it agrees that Microsoft didn't stay true to its assurances to the EU on ZeniMax. Now, that's not them saying that they were burned or saying that they were faithful. If they said things in closed-door meetings, the EU Competition Commission doesn't want to put that stuff out there. They need to have the trust of companies that if we say something to you behind closed doors, it's going to stay that way. That's how business works with government. A rep for the EU agency tells me that the Commission cleared the Microsoft ZeniMax transaction unconditionally as it concluded that the transaction would not raise competition concerns. Microsoft did not offer any commitments to the Commission. They also note that its conclusions hadn't relied anything about exclusivity on future ZeniMax games. None of the stuff that the FTC is using to try to justify this lawsuit was happening. If you look back at the EU report on the... Thank you to Mr. Stephen Tilo for going into weeds for all this, by the way. But if you look back at the report on the ZeniMax deal, it states that Microsoft said it would not have the incentive to cease or limit making ZeniMax games available for purchase on rival consoles. That same EU report also concluded even if the combined enemy was to engage in a total or partial input foreclosure strategy, the Commission considers that such a strategy would not have a material impact. And here is the actual report dialogue right here on this beautiful screenshot. Rival consoles would not be deprived of any essential input because video games come out all the time and could still rely on a large array of valuable video game content to attract players. So what did the FTC say again yesterday? Not that they broke the promise, but that Microsoft gave assurances it didn't have an incentive. By my reading, none of these statements contradict each other. Doesn't tell us if they feel that way about Call of Duty. The FTC is saying that if Microsoft told the EU it didn't need to go exclusive with the ZeniMax games but did, then perhaps it would do the same with Call of Duty. It's very confusing now, yes. So basically, the FTC said Microsoft did this wrong, and then when the people pointed out that that was never the case, well, it was implied. So the FTC is kind of reaching. As we've just went over, the FTC is feeling very, very burned. They've lost multiple cases with major players in multiple industries. And both Republicans and Democrats here in America, if you don't know, America only has a 2 political party system. And both parties feel that the government has not been getting in front of tech enough. This is the FTC trying to take a stand and swing for the fences, which, as they said, they want their people to be more comfortable swinging for the fences. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. But I don't think that they're going to win, because even if you say they'll make Call of Duty singular, Microsoft can say, do you know how many other first-person shooter franchises there are? And there's nothing stopping from Sony or some other developer from making their own FPS franchise that is eventually bigger than Call of Duty. And they all right. Honestly, between mobile, Steam, Epic Games Store, the fact that the Nintendo Switch has been a high five to independent developers, I think that the competition in the video game, in my personal cow's opinion, has never been higher. And Sony felt confident enough to be the first company to raise games from $60 to $70 before they even knew if this was going to go through or not. So them saying that this will allow Microsoft to raise prices is, I mean, you're raising prices. I think that this is going to drag out for a bit. But if the FTC can't find a smoking gun or anything like that, which right now I don't believe they have, I think it's going to drag for a while. The Microsoft may make some concessions, and the FTC may declare it a win. But right now, if I had to put money, yes or no, I would say that Microsoft is going to get to buy Activision Blizzard. Maybe not by June 23rd, but then Microsoft's going to say, hey, we deserve a speedy trial. We announced this 8-10 months ago, and we're trying to get this done. You need to bring your stuff to case right now. Let's go. So we will see how that goes. We're going to move on to our next story. In other news, did you watch the Game Awards? Because I was lucky enough to not only watch the Game Awards, but do it with a bunch of wonderful people like Bowser Kurga and Tripmon, who you can also find here on the YouTubes. And we had a really good time. As to be expected, God of War really cleaned up. Genshin Impact managed to bribe their way to Game of the Year. Whether you think a 3-year-old game should be allowed to use in-game currency to bribe its way onto Player's Choice. I mean, Player's Choice, not Game of the Year, excuse me. Whether you think that is another story and a debate for another video. And shockingly enough, Elden Ring, which God of War was beating up on all night, actually got Game of the Year. But one of the biggest moments besides all of the trailers, including love letters to mecha fans and the fact that the new Transformers game is coming, and From Software, which made Elden Ring, is also freaking making a why am I blanking on Armored Core 6? It was a beautiful non-in-game trailer, but it really looks cool. But during the Elden Ring team's 2022 Game of the Year speech, this numbnuts came on and suddenly started talking randomly. Now, it was originally reported that he was arrested, but he's now been properly detained by the police. So the Elden Ring team walked up there, and this kid, who, as you can see through this little screenshot, everyone's like, who is this guy? Walked up and said, hey, Martin, real quick, I want to thank everybody and say that I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi, Bill Clinton, after Elden Ring director Hidetaka Miyazaki finished his acceptance speech, and security was making for the stage even before he could say anything.
I want to thank everybody and say that I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi, Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
You can tell, sorry if I blew your eardrums out, you can tell that they were cutting his mic off when they realized that guy's not a Japanese developer on Elden Ring. Of course, the internet's going to internet. We have some really wonderful tweets. Why was there a random French kid on stage that shouted out Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton? Am I imagining that? We talked about it in our Discord chat too. It's like, what the hell is that? Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton, did I hear that right? I can't believe Miyazaki got invaded during his acceptance speech. And now, Jeff Keighley said the individual who interrupted our Game of the Year moment has been arrested. If you go back, you can watch him suddenly get up and just suddenly make a beeline, as this Kotaku article says, for the crew as they make their stage. And he's just waiting for his fame. The guy says that it's possibly some kind of anti-Semitic thing. It may just be that the guy's an idiot, but we don't know. Now, the article updates to say that this guy has a long history of these kinds of stunts. And the LAPD, which, oddly enough, they didn't arrest Will Smith after he assaulted somebody. They didn't arrest this guy either, but they did take him to a station for questioning. So, somebody probably just needs to I don't know, smack this idiot around or something because he keeps doing this kind of stuff. We're going to move on to our last story. And our last story, and before we speak about this, how about you like, comment, and subscribe? It really does help the channel out. And I've been told that it's more likely to happen if you guys hear it on a video. So, yeah, I hate doing it, but let's do it. We're going back to Activision Blizzard, which is still Activision Blizzard. This time, we're not talking about union suppression, though. Apparently, the Diablo 4 development is mired in crunch and poor leadership, as per Miss Grace Benfell on GameSpot. The Diablo 4 team has apparently been doing a ton of crunches, and the company is offering some really terrible incentives, from things to a $25 DoorDash credit when you work over 10 hours a day, or to gaining company stock shares after the game ships. Now, the first one, not great. I mean, I guess if you can DoorDash and get the stuff to your desk so that you can have a lunch break, but you shouldn't have to work through your lunch. Now, gaining the stock shares may be better, especially if Microsoft buys it, because it's going to be worth $95 a share, but still, how many shares am I getting? I would be, because if I'm getting like 1,000 shares and the Microsoft deal goes through, that's 95 grand. I'm for it. But, you know, how many shares am I getting? What do I have to do to get? So it's not really clear if these, the first incentive I would argue is not really worth it. I would argue you should be buying them at least one meal if you're requiring them to work at least 10 hours a day, not rewarding them for doing it. But this is obviously, as these perks are either ill-explained or, in my opinion, not worth it. It's not working because the Diablo 4 team is losing tons of experienced developers. One 20-person team lost half of its members over the course of a year. Some employees state that when they went to ask for raises and things for all the stuff that they've been doing, managers told them that you should just quit the company, get more experience elsewhere, and come back. Now, if you're a boss and somebody asks for a raise and you honestly don't think that they deserve one, you should instead give them tips on what to do, not say, hey, come back after you've built yourself up somewhere else. Because the employees are leaving and they're being replaced with new, inexperienced hires, and it's really slowing it down, making quotas be missed, and it is really terrible. In fact, many quoted employees seem to doubt that the game will release in a completed state come June. I want to make sure I read this entire next paragraph because it is very important. Diablo 4 has also reportedly seen multiple shifts in creative leadership. Development started 5 years ago under supervision of director Luis Barriga and lead designer Jesse McCree. Both leaders reportedly had a scattershot and unfocused approach to development, leading to confusion among developers. Barriga then brought on Sebastian Stepien, who was a creative director on games like The Witcher 3 and the head writer on Cyberpunk 2077. However, Sebastian then rewrote the entire game's narrative, and allegedly his script included frequent allusions to one character's experience with sexual assault in a way that disgusted and disturbed many employees. You can do it right, but apparently he's not doing it right. While the character has since been removed, the game reportedly is not handling its female characters, including main villain Lilith, well. In fact, it says poorly. It's also important to note that in August of 21, Barriga and McCree were fired in the wake of the wider Blizzard allegations of sexual abuse, misconduct, and poor treatment across all employees. Now, Blizzard has since brought on Vicarious Visions, which was been renamed Blizzard Albany, and put industry vet Rob Ferguson in charge of the franchise. Not just the game, the franchise. Now, the guy is apparently holding weekly Zoom meetings where he discusses their problems, their attrition, and their concerns, but often centers on his own interests like celebrities he has met or movies he enjoyed. Adding Blizzard Albany to the project also added to the chaos and created problems with duplicate work. What the hell? Now, Blizzard gave, I don't want to read it, but, Blizzard gave a quote to the story, and in the interest of being fair, we are going to read it. As you may know, game development in general, and Diablo 4 specifically, follows an iterative process where the scope evolves over time. That's true. 5 years is a long time to work on a project. Maybe it can change. Production on the game is going extremely well. Debatable. Overtime is voluntary and limited to specific teams. Probably not. We regularly survey the team on their professional well-being, and the latest results are the most positive they've been in years. Possible because it sounds like you've been in the toilet. In reference to some of the narrative, the story in question was floated more than 3 years ago under different leadership as character backstory, not game content. At the time, it was deemed inappropriate and we went in a different direction. We remain confident in the team. They're building something incredible and received a lot of positive feedback. I mean, a lot of this reads as corporate speak. I just want to... The employees have been through so much. I want to believe the employees. And the article goes on to talk about the report also leaked the game's release date of June 6, 2023, which, as we saw in that beautiful trailer at the Game Awards, is the correct release date. This is the latest in a series of lawsuits and reports conducting the mistreatment of workers, and Microsoft trying to buy them, but the FTC issued the lawsuit as we talked at the beginning of the show. This is unfortunately just more terrible news. And look, I love Diablo. I really want to play Diablo. But I'm committed to not playing any games as long as Bobby Kotick is CEO. I feel like he was the one who enabled all this. And a lot of people like to say, how could you do this? How could you let your employees be treated so well? Because they were making so much money that they just didn't want to rock the boat. They told themselves, it's okay. It's only a small group of people that are doing this. We keep talking to them. They'll get it eventually. And they're making so much money. But the quality and the leadership and everything else has been degraded at Activision Blizzard. I really feel that the only thing that's going to keep them from falling apart is if they eventually just get sold to Microsoft. Where they can fire Kotick or possibly just kick him out. Whatever it takes. Pay the troll to make him go away. It's the only thing that's going to fix things. But guys, this is an opinion show. Let me know what your opinion is. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I appreciate your support. And you guys have a great weekend. Play more games, because games are awesome. And you deserve awesome, especially around Christmas. I'll see you next time.